You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Cyberspace, the new frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast First Contact. Its mission? To explore every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. To seek out new viewers and have new conversations. To boldly view what many have viewed before. Welcome to First Contact, the Star Trek The Next Generation introcast, where two veterans of Trek fandom guide a newbie through the adventures of the Enterprise D. This week we are looking at When the Bough Breaks, which first aired the week of February the 15th, 1988. It was written by Hannah Louise Shearer and directed by Kim Manners. James, have you got some kind of synopsis for me?
The Enterprise follows an energy trail to the site of a mythical planet, which appears as they arrive. The inhabitants are dying, so they steal 6 children and Wesley in order to build a new society. Probably quite a small society. Dr. Crusher works out that they are dying because their shield weakened the ozone layer, so after some threats of violence, they decide to work together to solve the problems. Then everyone laughs at the end, like it's a terrible 60s show.
So Alex, as the newcomer to Star Trek, what did you think overall of this episode?
Well, I think if you had a description of the episode, you'd think, oh, okay, this sounds like the sort of thing that we've had before. It's not going to be very good. It's going to be a Wesley-based episode. I don't want to watch that. I think overall, though, I was surprised that, no, it held my attention, actually. It was okay. Like last week's, basically. It was basically fine. That's not to say it was perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't even say the best of the season, but better than a lot of what we've had, I would say.
I think we seem to be getting into a bit of a groove now. The episodes are basically fine. Not exceptional, but not enough to make you want to turn off either. Just plodding along, and I suppose that's what you can expect from most shows during a 26 episode run. I suppose there had to come a point where they utilised the fact that there are children on the Enterprise. It seems like something that's not really been exploited yet, and to use that as a plot point other than Wesley asking to get on the bridge, it seems like something they should be doing.
But is it a good thing? Because it brings up the point again about should there be families on board a starship?
Well, and right down to us having later on the line with Dr. Crusher saying, we all knew what we signed up for. Well, so you thought that this might be the case. You didn't think it would be, easy sailing, a situation where you could have families. Because up until this point, it seemed like the Enterprise has been on a mission and all of these things have been a bit out of the ordinary and things that they wouldn't have expected. Sort of a lot more diplomatic missions was what they expected, and they've had all these weird things happen. Whereas she's suggesting, no, we're signing up for the quite dangerous life where our children may well die.
And why do the Aldeans even need children? Why can't they just have fully grown people who are at mating age?
That is another question that probably needs to be addressed. And if they want to build a society with these new children, they take 7 down. Not even, 4 boys and 4 girls. No pairing off. They've got 7 children.
They don't take 7 children. They take 6 children and Wesley, who is double their age.
That scene when they're all still down and they say, you will be their leader, it still seems a bit off. Could they not have had some that were maybe slightly closer to Wesley's age? I'm sure they were trying to avoid the awkward sort of sexual tension that we had in Justice. But still, it does look rather strange having Wesley and then these children of between 4 and 10.
It's almost as if they've wanted this plot with the young children. They've decided, hey, Wesley's a child. I guess we probably ought to send him as well.
And to be fair to him, he's not really that offensive in this episode in any way. He performs his role reasonably. He doesn't have any lines that really put you off the character. Just gets on with it.
No, and I mean, right down to his plan being basically fine. It isn't annoying in the way it's conducted or anything like that. I would say this episode has the best use of Wesley that we've had so far.
We are actually using Wesley as a family member of Dr. Crusher. Sure, he does come up with a plan, but he's not acting like he's an adult in any way. It isn't him that saves the day by cleverly reprogramming the computer on the planet. His plan is basically to throw a strop. It is acting more like a child.
Well, and it is a good plan too, because, you know, they're starving themselves, and he realises that the Aldeans want what's best for the children. They don't want to be aggressors. They don't want the children to die. So the best thing is to make it come across that the Aldeans are harming the children by keeping them there.
I mean, it does result, though, in one of the most hilariously bad moments of the episode, where Picard comes down and you have the Aldeans say, well, first of all, you'll need to speak to the children. They're all on some kind of strike. I'm not very good with kids. Well, what was the point of any of this?
Do we feel that their motivation is strong enough, the Aldeans, for kidnapping the children? We said that in the episode of the Binars, that we quite liked that. They only had two choices, so they chose to steal the Enterprise. Here, does it seem like they are that desperate that they need to steal the children? Obviously, they've got a very powerful computer on their planet, and they have all these resources, but stealing the children, could there not be some other way for them? Is their motivation strong enough?
Well, I find it an odd plan anyway, because presumably they aren't humans. They look like humans, but they probably aren't. So I would have thought they were, you know, a slightly different species, and therefore having human children, it's not really the same. I don't know. It just strikes me as an odd plan anyway.
Well, are they all human children? We don't know. They don't clarify that they're all human, do they?
That's actually a good point, because there is the line that one of the parents says in the meeting, why did they take these specific children? And I just thought, it's because they're really racist. They just wanted a bunch of white kids. If you think about it, the racial diversity that must be on the Enterprise, not just among humanity, but every planet on the Federation, or a huge number of them, must be represented within Starfleet. Yet they've all just taken these human kids, or as far as I can tell, human kids, because the makeup department at this stage haven't worked out that they need to make aliens look not human.
Well, and such a small number as well. I mean, there seem to be a very small number of Aldeans for an entire planet. What is it? Something like 7 or 9? Very few of them. Yeah, they take one child for each section of the arts. The arts, which seem to be, as far as I can make out, computing, not really an art, shapes, music, and whittling.
The other thing is that they are supposed to be ill. We can't eat much, so clearly they're not eating. They all look fairly healthy. There's the last board. You know, she's a typical sort of Star Trek beautiful alien woman. If they are that desperate and they are that sick, not that they know they're sick, shouldn't there be some physical symptoms?
There's the legions that's referenced briefly, aren't there? But there's nothing aside from that. I think what I would have liked to have seen is, as you say, some more physical symptoms and the sign that they're covering it up. Let's say their hair's falling out or something, and it turns out they're wearing wigs, and you see a scene in one of their units and they take off a wig. But I guess maybe they would have justified it in the writing by saying, but they don't know that they're sick, sort of. They won't make the connection, so they couldn't have any more symptoms. I would have liked to have seen some more signs as well, yes.
But it's fine, really. It works, you know, if you accept the plot that's presented as it is, I guess.
Well, yeah, I would say that unlike with the last episode tries to revolve heavily around the mystery of why is he getting younger, despite the fact I think we can all work out pretty early on why he's getting younger. This episode has an element of that, which is the why are they getting sicker, but to be honest, if you don't connect that with the shield around the planet instantly, I don't really know what you're thinking of. But I would say that the core of this episode is much more the dilemma, that there's no obvious solution. They're taking the children, they don't want to negotiate, and if they don't agree, they'll push the Enterprise as far away as possible. That's the heart of the episode rather than the mystery, so you don't really care all that much about whether they look ill or not. It doesn't strike you at the time when you're watching particularly.
That is ridiculously powerful technology, isn't it? You would think the Federation would try and work with the Aldeans to maybe get this technology and use it themselves. Then they wouldn't actually really need starships anymore.
What do we think of this magical, mythical planet? I suppose it is Atlantis in space. It's a planet of great art and civilization and culture, and they're suddenly led there. I suppose, again, quite like last week's episode, it does seem a bit of an original series conceit. It is quite a hokey sci-fi premise.
I think for all the setup of it being a thing like Atlantis and them having all of their needs met by a computer so they can dedicate themselves to the arts, we don't really see a lot of that. Aside from, playing with shapes, whittling and music, there isn't really any great sense that that's what they're doing. All we see is them in their units or meetings in that main room. There's no sense of what makes this such an ideal place. And bizarrely, you could make a case for saying that Justice gets a little closer in trying to portray that society than this one does. You know, if you play down the orgies.
I think that's true, because I think the location filming certainly helped in that episode, although they did appear to be at Centre Parks. Just showing a wider society, and they had loads of extras. Here, clearly, the budget is a lot more limited, in that the society does seem to comprise of 7 people living in a tower block. You'd never get the sense that this is a great planet. It just does look like a very old-fashioned, old and not particularly detailed set.
They do reference their scientists, so that you presume that there are much more people behind the scenes which we're not seeing.
Was the one looking after Wesley not meant to be one of their scientists?
Well, she was a bit dim, really.
But was that not the point, that the scientists had forgotten all of their science? Which makes you wonder what they do with their time, but...
I suppose if you were doing that today, it would be a metaphor for us using the internet and always having our phones on us, and we never bother to remember anything because we can always look it up. And then what happens when we can't look it up? So, as a science fiction concept, that could be great to explore that, but they don't really bother going down that route. And why should they? It was 1988.
Although if she does dedicate herself entirely to science, does that not ever ring some sort of bell with someone that she doesn't know about it anymore? I mean, if you went to a lecture on quantum physics with Brian Cox, and Brian Cox turns around and goes, "Hey, stars. They're brilliant, aren't they?" You'd think that you'd just turned into another episode of Wonders of the Universe. However, if he then didn't go any further, you might question what's going on.
Also, her complete lack of curiosity. Basically, we don't go behind that door. At that point, I was worried that it was going to turn into another one of these societies where they worship the computer and the computer acts as a god. Happily, it didn't go down that route. I mean, there are hints of that, but it could have been a whole lot worse.
And with the talk of that big door and we don't go behind the door, when they did go through the secret door, did that seem a little unnecessary to you? The big shot of the power source? I mean, I get it that they've got this big power source that they can use and they can tap into, but that must have taken up some of the budget, and I'm not sure it was necessary for us to see it.
I couldn't believe that. I thought the episode was over. And then all of a sudden, we have this really expensive looking, gorgeous special effects shot, which is brilliantly lit and looks just very impressive. And I just thought, why is this here? It's just showing a power source. The episode was not about this in any way. It's a behind the curtain reveal. But they could have done that scene in the observation lounge. They really didn't need to show that. It looked good, but it didn't fit at all.
I think it might be like with last week. We had them going down to the planet and having a phaser fight for no real reason because it was a bit of a dialogue heavy episode, and this episode's very dialogue heavy. So I guess they wanted, kind of big special effect shot to kind of make you feel like it's not just all dialogue.
I think that worked better in the previous week, though, because of the placing. Because it was mid-episode, it gave you that slight little kick that you needed to get through the rest. Putting this at the end of the episode, it just seems weird. As Andrew said, you think it's ended, and then, oh no, there's a bit more that doesn't seem to add anything to anything. All right, okay, I don't see the point of it myself, but never mind.
I think one of the weaknesses of the plot is that anyone watching the episode is miles ahead of the characters. You know this is radiation poisoning. They give little hints of it, and then Dr. Crusher has to spend the afternoon working it out. I would like it if the crew were smarter than we were, or at the very least didn't take so long to work out things that have already been made massively clear to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's made all the worse for the fact that you have that dialogue such as, oh, I wonder if this could be connected to Earth and the ozone layer. And the entire audience is going, yes, it's the shield. I wonder if it could be the shield. Yes, it's the shield. It's infuriating for an audience, really. And it means that instead of being invested in the story to quite the degree you should be, you're just waiting for it to catch up with you, which is never a good way of writing, I don't think. There's very few occasions where it works. The only occasions I can think of are, say, in the likes of a Hitchcock film. Something like Frenzy. We know who the murderer is, no one else knows who the murderer is, but we're invested in watching them trying to find out. However, Hitchcock, this isn't.
I mean, they did it in The Naked Now, Geordie going around touching people and then them touching people and nobody knows what's going on. And it makes the crew look completely idiotic, and you think, is it to make the audience think that they're really smart and they've worked it out before, or I don't really understand why they do it.
I feel it's because some of the plotting and a lot of the writing in this series does still seem to follow a 60s mould of storytelling. The teleplays don't really seem to appreciate the intelligence of the audience, right down to that last scene where the little girl gives Picard a flower and then everybody's laughing. I mean, that could have been in the original series quite easily. It is unbelievably cheesy. It sort of fits, though.
They seem to be laughing a bit too much, I think. It is that, like, when Kirk and McCoy and the rest of the bridge crew are laughing at something Spock said. It's way over the top.
It's really unnecessary. We don't have to tie everything up in a nice, neat little bow and have everyone laughing at the end because everything's worked out all right. There's been a major kidnapping incident where children have been taken away from their families and not given any new clothes for the entire time they're down on that planet. I mean, Wesley only has one jumper, for God's sake. You've had this. And then everyone's like, well, it all worked out well in the end. And all the parents are thinking, no, actually, I should get my children off this starship. This is clearly far too dangerous to have my family here.
But do you think it was a sensible thing for the writers at first to kind of emulate 60s Star Trek because that's what was popular? So they kind of think they just want more of the same?
To an extent. I think at times they sway a little too far into the 60s. Or they try to do an update in a way that feels unnatural. The closest comparison I can think of is Torchwood, where they thought, we'll take the sort of Doctor Who kind of idea, but present it for adults. Okay, how do we do that? I'll just put a bit of sex and blood in it. And at times, it's felt like that. The Naked Now, again, being the first example that comes to mind, with let's do The Naked Time again, but this time with orgies.
There is that. We have to tie this to the present day. We have to make it an allegory for modern times. Oh, are you saying like all our industry is actually what's damaging Earth? Wow, that's a pretty deep point. But you don't actually have to mention the ozone layer. It makes it a bit too explicit.
Well, I'm sure next time that Next Generation tackles global warming in around season 6 or 7, I'm sure that'll be a great episode.
Incidentally, on the point of science, sterility caused by radiation. You know what? I'm not sure that is reversible.
I'm fairly certain it's not. I think all these people are already walking corpses.
They should have ended the episode on that note.
Well, I mean, the line is very specifically there. It says they're all dying. Okay, so it's not just that they're sterile, they are dying.
Well, Picard's line is the legend will die, but the people will live.
No, the legend will die and the people will die. It will be a dead world with nothing left behind but some instruments and some whittled wood.
It's got a really impressive reactor, though. So overall, another episode we thought was pretty solid, yeah?
I'd say good, but not good enough to make me think I'm going to seek that one out to watch. Just that if it was in a run of episodes, I wouldn't use it as an excuse to go and do other things before the next one started.
I didn't particularly like it at all.
So no, in answer to your question.
Well, I'm sure we've all got some other random thoughts we'd like to share, and we do that in our quickfire round.
Quickfire.
A couple of the non-speaking children are Will Wheaton's relatives. Isn't that exciting? The non-speaking young hostages included Will's younger siblings Jeremy and Amy as Mason and Tara.
So each of the children gets sent off to a unit. One to Whittlewood with the man and his wife. The other child goes off with the girl who takes a shine to her. And then the other little girl goes off with the elderly man to learn music. The creepy elderly man to learn some music. There is nothing dodgy about that, nothing at all. I mean, there's no history of musicians having little indiscretions with children. Jackson, Watkins. I can only assume he specialises in the fiddle.
That was weird. Seemed to get some kind of interference. Hope we didn't miss anything important or libelous.
Picard and Crusher beam down. And when they do, as soon as they've gone and the view screens no longer got the LDNs on, Worf turns to the comm and says, okay, now beam now, to send Riker and Data down. But he has to wait until they can't see him to do it. Why does it have to be a voice command? In this futuristic ship, why does it have to be that can only be powered by voice?
So the audience knows what's going on, because we're idiots. Wesley and Beverly's interaction, where she secretly passes over her scanner so they can take scans of the planet, that must be the least subtle bit of passing something over ever seen in the history of television.
Yeah, right down to you having Wesley going up behind the Aldean and waving it around her head like he suddenly entered into some sort of Weimar cabaret.
And we've got the tool for shaping the wood, the sculpting tool. That just does all the work for you, doesn't it?
And they keep playing it down with Harry saying, am I really doing this? The tool is helping you to do it. Okay, so the tool is actually doing it for me. No, it's helping. So could I do this with a knife? Don't be stupid. You're an idiot.
Aldea is Spanish for village.
Right. The Aldeans do get away with it at the end, and everyone's happy and jokey about them. They are kidnappers with powerful technology, and the episode just ends with going, "Oh, aren't they brilliant?"
Yeah, that's been the case for a lot of this series, though, hasn't it? That there's been something that's happened and then it's glossed over at the end. It was the same last week. Just ignore the war. That's fine. Oh, and then the kidnapping. Yeah, it's fine. We understand. We've all been there.
Well, that's another episode done. Hopefully we'll see more children in the future. Next time we will be talking about home soil. But for now, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. One of the electronic pieces of music in this episode is called Scanning for Children. Which I can only assume was the sequel to Scouting for Boys.